Hello and welcome. In this lecture, we are going to create the styling for our project using CSS. To save time, I've already added the CSS code to our style sheet. So let me just run through them with you. In order to style an element, you need to define the selector, which is the item you're trying to style. Then you separate, then you have the curly braces. That's the opening and that's the closing. In between the curly braces is where you define the styling you want to use for that element. On line 2 here, the body is the selector, which is the element I want to style. And these are the values. The properties are on the left and the values are on the right. You separate the property from the value with a colon, and then once you've defined the value, you need to end it with a semi or semicolon. If you don't do that, it will not apply the styling to the element. So line 3 there, I've got a text align property, and I've set the value to center. What that means, it will center any text for the body of that element. Line 4 is the background, which is the background color. I've set it to white. FFF is also the same thing as white in hexadecimal values. Line 5, I've defined a font family. Font family is actually the font type. I've defined sans serif as the first choice, and if that's not available, it will default to Arial. This one or the other should be available on most computers. Line 6 is the font weight. Font weight property basically is used to set how thick or thin you want the characters in the text to be displayed. Okay, so there are several ways you can do this. You can set it to bold. Other values can include normal, or you can actually set a number. If you are setting a number value, you can do that to define the thickness of the characters. If you specify 100, like I've done here on line 20, it defines the thickness of the characters. So the thickness from 400, for example, is the same as normal. If I was to set this value from bold to normal, it's the same thing as saying instead of bold, I could set that to, instead of normal, I could set that to 400. So bold is equivalent to 700. Notice here in line 20, I've used just 100. So to make the text bold is equivalent to 700. Then anything above that, it increases the thickness of the characters. Line 9, I am styling the H1 selector, which is our title for the web page, and giving it a color. I'm using a hexadecimal value for the color. Font weight, again, I'm using bold, which is equivalent to 700. Font size, which is the actual size of the font or text, I've set that to 50 pixels. I have set the margin on line 13 to 1350 and 20 pixels. Margin basically refers to the space outside the element. And there's usually 4 values. You've got the top, the right, the bottom, and the left. So you apply it in that order: top, right, bottom, left. The fact that I've only specified 3 values for on line 13, those 3 values will apply. The first value goes to the top, the second goes to the right, and the third goes to the bottom. All right, so the first value goes to the top, the second will go to the right, and the left margin. All right. And then the last value will go to the bottom, whereby I've specified only 3 values. The first goes to the top, the second value goes to the right and the left, and the last goes to the bottom. So that's how you specify the margin. Padding is the same way, you apply it in the same way, but padding refers to the space inside the element. Don't forget to end your values with a semicolon, and don't forget to separate the properties from the values with a colon. If not, it will not apply properly. Line 16 to 23, I have got an ID that I'm styling. The ID here, I've got the ID as clock div, and I've applied the following properties and values. Some of them I've already gone through, so I'm not going to run through them again. Line 19, display means I want the elements displayed as a block in line. So it will show the hours, the days, minutes, all in a block in line. Font weight I've already covered. Text align I've covered. Font size I've already covered. Line 25 is interesting. I have got the same div, but notice I've got a greater than sign after it. The greater than sign on line 25 means it's applying to the immediate children of that div. All right, so which means apply this styling here to the immediate children of this clock div called div. So if we go to our HTML, this is the clock div. We've got the clock div here, okay? And this clock div has got other divs, and it's also got span elements. That's what it's referring to. Whereby you have, say, for example, a 3-tier level of div. This styling will only affect the second level of div and not the third. However, if I was to use a space between the selectors instead of the greater than sign, then it will affect both the second and the third level divs. So the space usually means if you just create a space rather than the greater than sign, it will apply to all the levels of that element. Please note that the greater than selector is not supported in lower versions of Internet Explorer, okay, but it should work in other higher versions of it. Again here, line 32, I've used the div here and greater than sign. What that means, it will apply this styling to the child element of the div that is called span. Okay, that's what that means. It will apply to the child element. Border radius refers to the rounded corners. It makes the elements, gives it a rounded edge. Background I've already discussed. Display line we've already mentioned. Padding refers to the space inside the element, and it pretty much works the same way as the margin. So it has the 4 corners that I mentioned previously. Font size I've already discussed, so I'll just save this and then we can see what our page looks like. Excellent. So this is what the styling looks like. Not too bad. Notice none of the days, hours, none of these is showing yet. We will implement that using JavaScript. So that's it for this lecture. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.